impressions of the book, like impressions about the book and the series of Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I first watched the series. I think they filmed it last year in 2020, and I really loved it. There are some very interesting ideas. Interestingly, the book was written as a warning to the humanity about how bad the world can become in the future. However, like me as a free thinking person, as a liberal in some ways, as a lefty, I sort of enjoy some of the ideas. For instance, what I really liked, what I really enjoyed, I'm not monogamous myself by my nature, and I really enjoyed the idea that everybody belongs to everybody else. Um, of course, there's the problem of forcing people into either monogamy or polygamy. So I wouldn't like to force everyone into polygamy, but forcing everyone into monogamy is equally wrong, and it hurts. I see it around myself, like people who don't feel good, who get tired of their single partner. So I'm sure that lots of people are polygamous, polyamorous by their nature. I think so. So probably it would be the world would be a much better place if polyamorous and polygamous people would have the opportunity of, enjoying multiple partners. Like I couldn't eat the same soup day and day and day in and day out, day by day. That would be too much, right? So I can imagine that living with the same person for years could be tiring to some. There can be love. Probably there are couples who are really monogamous like individuals who are monogamous by their own nature, and they successfully create monogamous couple with another person, like same-sex couples or heterosexual couples. But on the other hand, however, there are lots of polyamorous people. So I think a lot of issues um, in people's marriage and sexual lives would change if polygamy would be as acceptable as monogamy is. So the real problem is forcing people into systems. Um, that's why, on the one hand, I like the idea, like the Brave New World. It's a world, right? It's in the book. Aldous Huxley presents two different worlds: the civilized world of the future and the savage world of the past. So in the savage world, like it's our world. People are monogamous, there are marriages, there are children. In the world of the future, children are not born. So it's one of those very interesting ideas Aldous Huxley and many other authors are presenting. Like children are made in labs. Being a father or a mother is something very shameful in this civilized world. Also, it is very, very shameful to be monogamous. Like, if you do not belong to everybody else, you are stealing from the community. That's a very interesting idea. In some ways, it reminds me of the kibbutz system in Israel when, like, big groups of people live together, or all the kids are socialized in the same environment while their parents are working. So that's interesting. In the book, it says that monogamy creates jealousy, it creates secrecy. So these are negative traits. So you should be aware of that and stay away from monogamy and belong to everybody else, have fun, enjoy lots of free sex with everyone. Homosexuality is not an issue. When young kids have like erotic plays or games or express their sexuality, it's not an issue. So that's a very interesting world, actually. The book starts with Mustafa Mond, one of the controllers of the world. I think they have 10 controllers, and Mustafa Mond is the controller of Western Europe or Europe as a whole. And he talks about how terrible the world of the past was and how cool their society, their utopia is. And it's very interesting to listen to Mustafa's opening monologue, actually. What else I liked? I liked the idea of polygamy, the idea of free sexuality, like you don't have to be persecuted because of your homosexuality or bisexuality. You can make love with whomever you want. And then this society, well, it has a hierarchy. In the book, Mr. Mons, the controller, who is one of the most influential people in the civilized world, talks about an interesting experiment. They did the experiment on a group of like elite guys. Um, it was in an island. I think it was Crete, next to Turkey, if I'm not mistaken. There are different groups of people like alphas, betas, gammas, deltas, and lowest of them all is epsilons. In the lab, they create alphas, they create betas, they condition those beings. For instance, if your destiny is to be created, I won't say to be born because people are not born. If your destiny is to be created as an epsilon, for instance, they would keep you in very special conditions. For instance, they would lower the amount of oxygen, for instance, to 75%, and that would affect on your overall formation, especially on the size and functions of your brains. So this is what they do. They condition people, they create those guys, and then there is this interesting scene. It's something like a kindergarten, and the kids are being conditioned. For instance, they would put books and flowers in front of the kids, and whenever an alpha kid, alpha is like the highest. You wouldn't even call it highest. They don't use the term highest. Like the overall objective, like of the alphas, is to mostly have fun, to enjoy the world, to have fun, to work on certain positions, and then they would electrocute all those little alphas whenever they try to reach and grab a book or a flower. I think it was alphas, if not betas. So for each group, they are making those conditionings. It's very interesting, actually. You can go very deep into it and study the structure of their world government. There is one world government, actually. Of course, I wouldn't like to live there as an epsilon, even though they condition you according to your social status. So, as an epsilon, in theory, I wouldn't be unhappy. However, we meet those characters who do feel sort of unhappy or who do not really fit. One of the main heroes is finally sent to, I think it was Iceland, because he wouldn't fit in that part of the society. So Mr. Mond decides to send him away to Iceland or somewhere remote. So that's interesting. I'd love to experience that society, but I'd like to be an alpha, obviously. So it depends on people. Like you could be beta and be still happy because you have this amount of work. Then you can have fun. You can have lots of sex. There is a drug, like it's available to everyone, Soma. Whenever you feel down or unhappy, you take your Soma and it makes you happy. That's interesting because, like, we have our own Soma, right? We have Facebook, we have YouTube. Whenever I feel down, I go to YouTube and watch some lives. I have a list of my preferred authors. I listen to audiobooks, etc., etc. So we do have different types of drugs. So why not have Soma as well? We have alcohol, we have weed, etc., etc. So I wouldn't condemn this idea of, using drugs and using very efficient drugs. Why not? Again, um, so I'd be for Soma, I'd be for polygamy, I'd be for the way of life of alphas. It could get boring after a while, but still, there are very interesting passages in the book when some of the characters analyze their lifestyle. Again, in the island, when they sent people to the island, during that experiment, there was a problem. All the alphas, the society consisted of only alphas, so they tried to create an egalitarian society, like only equals, and that they would have only alphas in that society. Then problems started to arise. Like, who is going to do that work? Um, who is going to be responsible for those tasks? And then they started to rebel. There was something like a civil war, and they killed each other. So egalitarian society didn't work in the book. And that's why, from the paradigm of the book, this social conditioning makes real sense. Like, you need different, even when we look at nature, there is diversity, right? And we have different traits, different characters. Some people like to be very active physically, others are like kind of lazy. Some people are extroverts, others are introverts, etc., etc. So this diversity probably should be respected, right? You can't expect everyone to be the same or to do the same job, the same functions, etc., etc. So this social conditioning sort of makes sense, and human societies have tried that. For instance, the system of castes in India, right? Or like ancient Greek philosophers would discuss that as well, that there are different groups of people in the society, like merchants, soldiers, craftsmen, etc., etc. So the book is very interesting from that perspective, and that society of the of the brave new world is pretty interesting. So I got very impressed. And then I first watched the series, then listened to the audiobook. Like, the series are a bit different. They modernized it. They added a few interesting layers into the series. So, spoiler alert: if you'd like to watch the series, maybe you shouldn't listen to me. But still, I won't give away everything. One of the cool things they did with the series, they added the layer of artificial intelligence. In the book, we don't have that. In the series, we do have that. Like, I don't remember. Indra, I think that's the name of this artificial intelligence, which controls the AI part of their lives. And as a civilized citizen, you get a contact lens. You put it on, and you connect to the system, to the social body. That's a very interesting term, social body. You connect to the social body, and then you can enter augmented reality in a way. For instance, there is an interesting scene, like two best friends are talking, like two girls, and one of them is changing the appearance of her dress in an instant. Like she thinks of it, or I don't know how they control it, probably by their brain. So she thinks of it, and then everyone else starts to see her in a different dress. That's the AI parts of the movie, and it's very interesting to follow like the development, the plot, how it develops, and what's happening to this AI part of the movie. You won't see that in the book, right? So it's something that exists in the series, not in the books. You don't have that. Apart from the AI and the contact lenses, um, what else they did? There was something else actually. I wanted to talk about that as well, but what was that? Well, there is an interesting character called the Savage. His name is John. So outside of this civilized world, there is the old world. Actually, there is something like Disneyland, a theme park. You go there, you explore the past of the humanity, like how we used to live. Like people would get married, children would be born. It's kind of funny because it talks about our present day societies, and in the book it is presented as something, in some ways as something not really attractive, like all this, for instance, jealousy, marriage, getting drunk, etc. It's very interesting to follow those things, because when you have soma, you don't have to drink alcohol, and you don't have to get jealous when everybody belongs to everybody else. So there is no domestic violence, right? Because there is no secrecy, no jealousy. There's no domestic violence, there's no alcoholism, and soma is not like cocaine or some LSD that would harm your body. Actually, the civilized world is much better. We do have characters who are outside of that civilized world. For instance, there's a lady who used to live in this civilized world, an alpha plus. So there are alphas, alpha pluses, beta pluses. I think she was an alpha plus, and she got stuck in that park for years. She got pregnant. They took her away. She had her baby in that theme park with a bunch of savages, and it's so interesting to both in the book and in the movie to see all these conflicts. Well, in the book, it's more interesting because in the series, some of these passages are omitted. So, for instance, a bunch of ladies come to her house and start to beat her with a lash because she would sleep with all the men in the theme park, because everybody belongs to everybody else, right? And then, well, in her world that's true, but in the world of savages it's the opposite. It's vice versa. One woman, one man. So she suffers and she doesn't have her soma. She has to drink a lot. And of course, it deteriorates her well being and her health. In the book, you get this image of a lady with bad teeth, bad smell, who is physically ill because of that harsh conditions of our modern day society, which is the savage society. And then she gets back to the civilized world with her son. Her son hasn't experienced the civilized world yet. So he comes in. They call him the savage because he's not from that world. Um, and then Again, the book and the series are a bit different. In the series, this savage actually fucks up the whole system in a very, very bad way. I don't want to spoil your experience, so I won't say what he did to this beautiful, to me, in many ways, it's a beautiful society. So I won't say what he did to that society, but there are ideas to ponder upon, to consider, like how an outsider or how something which is not part of the system can affect the system. And again, in the series, it's interesting because the AI, the artificial intelligence, wants to get this external thing into the system to get resilience, to train itself. It's something like machine learning. So it's pretty cool actually. In the book, it's a bit different. The savage isolates himself from this civilized society because he doesn't fit. One of the passages I really enjoy is one of the main heroes. Her name is Lenina. It's Lenin, right? Vladimir Vladimirovich Lenin, the guy behind the Russian Revolution and USSR. So Lenina kind of falls in love with the savage, and she wants to make love to him. And she tries to do that. She takes her all the garments, all the dresses off, and then the savage he didn't have sex with a woman before, um, and he likes her. Probably he's in love with her too, but he's ashamed of love, of sexuality. So instead of making love, he gets very angry and he starts to beat her because, well, in the savage world, you are considered a slut if you're not married and you are having sex with someone else. You're considered a slut. And the savage John has seen how people treated other sluts. People beat his own mother. Other women came and beat his own mother because of her whorish ways. Let's put it that way. So that's a heartbreaker to me because like they could have a magical experience, and it's the reality of modern day humanity. Me personally, I live in Armenia, which is a conservative country. We have our own Christian church, the Apostolic Church, and all those ideas of chastity, purity, virginity before marriage, those ideas are circulating widely in our society. So I see how those ideas hinder when something is forced upon someone else, it becomes a hindrance. If you choose it and if it fits your personality, that's different. But if you have to do that, and there is no other way, then of course it's a huge hindrance. So that sin is terrible to me because they could have had a very beautiful romantic and sexual experience. Instead, the horrified Lenina, the poor girl, has to run and hide in the bathroom because John gets crazy. He thinks of her as a whore, even though he would like that sexual experience. Yeah, that's a very strong and interesting passage, sin in the book. Unfortunately, we don't have that in the series, so you'd want to experience both the book and the series. Yeah, and the same goes for like I'd say the same about, for instance, homosexuality or child sexuality. I'm not talking about pedophilia, of course, but still, if children are doing, the same thing, like uh, let's say one is 14, another one is 15. Very often, when adults discover that, they're like, "Don't do that. It's bad. It's negative, etc., etc." So this healthy sexuality is interpreted as something terrible, something negative, something you should avoid for some reason before marriage, before you're 18 or whatever. That's kind of crazy to me. So that's one of the reasons I like this Society of the Brave New World, because there's this freedom. You are not looked down at if you are gay, for instance, or again, children are not treated as asexual angels, like for instance, teenagers or younger kids who don't have the right of exploring their own bodies and the bodies of others. There is an interesting opening scene. There's a garden, and in the garden, kids play around. I don't even remember how they put it. They express erotic plays, right? I think in the book it says so. That's an interesting scene again, because no one is bothered, no one is like, oh my god, what are they doing in the bushes, etc., etc. It's normal, kids are exploring themselves and the other kids. So that's it. If you've seen the series, if you've read the book, if you've listened to the audiobook, uh, give me your feedback. How do you feel about it? Did you like it or not? Why? And it's interesting because one of the funny things to me is I watched a review of the book in Armenian, and this guy on YouTube, one of those guys was a conservative, and he's like, in the end, by the end of the program of the interview, he's like, "Well, I hope that how did he put it? I hope that family values win over this doggish lifestyle, and we survive, like our current values survive." So obviously, based on your own values, you can perceive this oeuvre, this work, in a different light, according to your own identities and value systems. So that would be interesting. And Aldous Huxley, they're saying that he too wrote it as a warning, like what science could do to people, also in a negative way. So uh, that's interesting because I'm fascinated. Um, I'm rather fascinated with that Brave New World. In many ways, it's very interesting. So I don't know. Uh, I don't understand those fears. Like why we should, you know, remain in this way. Why should we be conservative, monogamous? Why should we condemn, for instance, different sexualities? Why should we try to keep girls virgins before marriage? Why not allow everyone to experience life the way they want to, as long as they are not like really seriously physically harming others? Yeah, that's interesting. So that's it for now. If you have questions, ideas, please do share. Why I'm doing this live? One of the reasons is to just like allow my English students to express themselves in English. And even if you're not one of my students, you're welcome to join to practice your English. So even after the live, whenever you'll be watching this, you can leave short comments, okay, below the video, and just practice. Practice makes perfect. So just talk, just express your own ideas. We have Facebook groups, so I would even encourage you to enter the Facebook group, and you could do your own live in case if you're very afraid or ashamed of your English or whatever. You're free to join our groups and make a live or upload a video response into those groups. I would really encourage you to do that, because you'd practice, and practice makes perfect. You would overcome that sense of shame, fear, um, or other factors that are stopping you. Right, that's it for now. I think we don't have comments, right? No, it's empty on Facebook and it's empty on YouTube. So I wish you guys a great evening or day based on where you are and based on when you'll be watching my video. See you. Right, finish. Oops. Finish on Facebook and let's finish on YouTube.